All right, so today we get to do geometric sequences. Yesterday we did arithmetic. Today we're doing geometric. Geometric is when you multiply to get to the next number. So instead of adding to get to the next number, you multiply to get to the next number. And you multiply to get to the next number. So instead of like, hang on a second, when you multiply to get to the next number. So instead of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, when you're adding 2 each time, now it would be like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, where you multiply to get to the next number. And whatever you're multiplying by is called the common ratio. So that's different than the common difference, which is what you're adding to get to the next number. Now we have the common ratio, what you're multiplying to get to the next number. So as you can see, our numbers are going to get pretty big, pretty fast. Let's look at this one. It says, write the first 4 terms. The first term is 3. The common ratio is 2. So the first term is 3. I want to write the first 4 terms. Common ratio is 2, so it means I multiply by 2, I multiply by 2, I multiply by 2. And those would be the first A1, A2, A3, A4. And of course it would keep on going. So not bad, right? But what if I said, hey, find the 10th term? Do we really feel like multiplying by 2 and then multiplying by 2 and then multiplying by 2 like all those times? We could. Right? Or we could say, well, if I went to the 10th term, how many times would I need to multiply by 2? And I think what we figured out yesterday would be you would start at the first term, and then you would need to multiply by 2 9 times, actually, to get to the 10th term. So that would be 3 times 2 to the 9th, whatever that turns out to be here, would be the 10th term. Which, by the way, that would not be equal to 6 to the 9th. I'm just going to write that real small. You would do that on your calculator, 2 to the 9th, and then times 3. So that's going to give us our formula for the nth term here is equal to the first term times the common ratio to the n minus 1 power. So a sub n, just like yesterday, is the nth term. A sub 1 is the first term. Multiplied by the common ratio r, n minus 1. And the reason it's n minus 1 is because, let's say we're at the 10th term, we only need to multiply by 2 9 times to get to the 10th term. So let's see. So if the first term is negative 10, oh, they only want me to find the second term. That's pretty easy. So the first term is negative 10, r is 4, n is 2. So can you find the second term? Why, sure. I'll just multiply by 4, negative 40, right? Let's say instead of the second term, let's say they wanted let's just do an easy one, the 5th term. I could continue to multiply by 4, multiply by 4, multiply by 4, or just realize when I get to the 5th term, I'm taking the first term times the common ratio to the 4th power, right? And that I can actually do, like 4 to the 4th, I believe is 256 times negative 10, so negative 2560. So usually we do actually find out that final number. We would just type it in our calculator. Perfect. So then we say, well, do they always have to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Well, maybe not. If the common ratio is a fraction, like in this one, negative 14 is the first term. Now it wants the 5th term, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to multiply by negative 1/2. So when you multiply by a negative, the sign's going to alternate, right? Negative 1/2 times negative 14 is positive 7. But then when I multiply that by negative 1/2, I'm going to keep it as a fraction. Because if you start doing decimals, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So I just multiplied that one out, negative 1/2, negative 1/2, negative 1/2, negative 1/2. And now I get the answer. The 5th term is negative 7/8. If I had wanted to use the formula, I would say the 5th term is the first term times negative 1/2 to the n minus 1 would be 4th power. And I could put that in my calculator, it would give me the same answer. Which, by the way, if your calculator gives you a decimal answer, you guys probably know this, You could do math, change to frac. So if I type that in my calculator and I get a decimal, we always prefer fraction answers. So you could do math, change to frac, and that would just change it to -7/8. Okay, so next one here, the 7th term. I rewrote that to say the first term is 9. Common ratio is -3, so it's going to alternate between negative and then positive, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th term is kind of far out there, so I'm going to use the formula. The 7th term would be the first term times -3 to the 6th power. And I would take my calculator, type that in, 9 times -3 to the 6th power. I believe I get 6561. Is that what you got? 9 times -3 to the 6th power. And onwards we go, right? Like sometimes you can figure them out in your head. Like this one, you probably could. It says the 5th term is -1, so it's a little weird. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th term is -1. The common ratio is -1. So if I start at the 5th term, -1 times -1 is +1. Then times -1 is -1. Then times -1 is +1. I could probably go backwards and find the first term, just backwards multiplying by -1. And you're probably like, hey, there's a pattern here. Based on the pattern you see, what would the 100th term be? Be -1 or +1? How do you know? Well, if I look back, the 2nd term, the 4th term, the 6th term, the 8th term, all the even terms are 1 and all the odd terms are -1. So the 100th term there is just 1. Cool. Okay, the 4th term is 1/81. Find the 5th term. Don't need a formula and I don't even really care what the first 3 terms are. I could just be like, okay, the 4th term is 1/81. I gotta find the 5th term. So if I multiply 1/81 times 1/3, I get 1/343. Yeah, 243. 243. 1/243. So I didn't need the formula for that one. This one I'm going to use the formula for. It tells me the first term is 1/10. I'm multiplying by 1/10 each time. And my zeros are getting like more and more. That's the 3rd term, 4th term, 5th term, 6th term. I could see that I'm adding a 0 each time, so I could do like 1/10,000, 1/100,000, right? Or I could use the formula and say the 6th term is the first term times the common ratio to the n-1. I see my bases are the same, so I'm just going to write this as 1/10 to the 6th. You can leave that like that. You could write it out, right, if you wanted to, all those zeros on the bottom. Either way is totally fine. So that's using the formula to find the next term, whatever term they tell you, in the geometric sequence. So it's not terrible, right? All right, so now we're going on to geometric series. Geometric series, just like arithmetic series, we added them up. Now in a geometric series, we're going to add them up. So it's going to be instead of 2 comma, 2 comma 4 comma 8 comma 16 comma 32. Now we're going to add all those numbers up. Yikes. So we're going to get a big number, right, when we add them all up. So if we try an example here, it says the first term is 4, the common ratio is -3. So what's kind of nice about a common ratio being negative is we're going to alternate between a positive number and a negative number. And you notice that I am putting addition signs, right, in between each one, because now it said it's a series. So a series has addition signs. Now here, how many terms does it want me to add up? Oh, 7? Oh, 7 terms. Okay, fine. I already have 4. It would be like the 5th term is actually +324 then negative 972. The numbers get so big here, positive 2916. I'm already tired, right? And that was only 7 numbers. Now that I have the numbers, I could add these up on my calculator. If I add them up on my calculator, I get 2188. That was a lot of work, right? There's got to be an easier way. And there is. It's called a formula. At this time, you're like, just tell me the formula, right? I get it, all these formulas. This is a little bit of a crazy formula. S sub n is equal to a sub 1 minus a sub 1 r to the n over 1 minus r. And again, S sub n is the sum of the first n terms. A sub 1 is the first term, r is the common ratio, n is the number of terms. So we'll just do a couple of these and then you'll get the whole thing. So here they want me to add this up. Now this I could just actually add up if I wanted to, because I can notice again that the common ratio is 3. But like we saw from above, it's actually a lot of work even to add up 6 or 7 terms and write them all out and add them all up. So let's try the formula. The sum of the first 6 terms is a sub 1, which is 6, minus a sub 1. The common ratio we could figure out was 3 to 6 terms. So that's just, happenstance that the first term is 6 and we're adding up the first 6 terms over 1 minus 3. You could put that whole entire thing in your calculator. Sometimes I put the numerator in the calculator and then the denominator and then divide them. So if I put the numerator in the calculator, I'm going to get that. And then I can divide that, 2184. And even though that's a little bit of a more intense formula, I think it's easier. I'm writing out all 6 terms and adding them up. A sub 1 minus a sub 1 r to the n over 1 minus r. You can get some kind of crazy answers here. So like here, again, we're only adding up 5 terms. The common ratio looks like a half. I'm going to do it with the formula though. The sum of the first 5 terms is a sub 1 minus a sub 1 r to the n. And that's just the n, by the way, not the n minus 1, like the other one was. We always want our answers as fractions, but we can do like decimals in between. So like if I put this in the calculator and I just have this answer written down here. Yeah, so 9.6875. If I put that in the calculator, I'm gonna get 19.375. But again, I always want my answer as a fraction. So I'm gonna change it to frac 155 over 8. Perfect. Do we need to do another one? I don't know. Let's see. That's only 4 terms, 3 terms, 5 terms. I don't know. It's kind of all the same thing, I guess. The only time that it's tricky, like I feel like let's just do number 5. I feel like this one's a little bit tricky because you don't know. Oh, you do know the n. The n is 5. Never mind. The n is 5 because it said a sub 5. So the sum of the first 5 terms, it's a 5, would be a sub 1 minus a sub 1 r to the n over 1 minus r. It's kind of the same thing each time. Just be careful, 1 minus negative 3. I don't have that answer in front of me. You could just plug that one in your calculator. So the sum formula is like more complicated formula, but you just plug everything in and type it in your calculator, maybe change to frac, and then you're good. All right, so that's geometric series.